What is going on, guys? My name is John and welcome back to yet another video. This week, the newest installment of the Pokemon franchise, Legends Arceus, dropped, and it's easily the most extensive and innovative Pokemon game that's come out in years. If you're a regular to my channel, you know that I'm big on completing the Pokedex, and considering that the main focus of this game is doing that, I want to test my skills and see just how quickly I could catch every Pokemon in the entire game. Today we're going to find out how easy you can catch every Pokemon in Legends Arceus. Now, before I start saying anything, this video will have major spoilers. I really wish I could talk about the game without giving out too much, but this game is so unlike the other games in the series that it's literally impossible to do so. So if you haven't played Legends yet and you don't want to know a bunch about the game, hopefully you'll check out the video another time. If you haven't seen one of my catch 'em all videos before, the rules are very simple, but this time I decided to switch it up a little bit. So normally I try to catch only the regional Pokemon in the Dex. For example, in Brilliant Diamond, I caught every Pokemon from Turtwig to Arceus and ignored the previous 3 gens of Pokemon. In this challenge, the goal is to catch the entire Pokedex. Because I tried my best to avoid any sort of spoilers, I played through this game almost entirely blind, so this is easily the most difficult and lengthy catch-em-all challenge I've ever done. I'll also be doing this without any glitches or exploits, and hopefully, unlike the BDSP video, I won't look like a complete dummy and the game won't be broken literally hours after uploading this video. Before getting to the challenge, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Roughly only 40% of the people that watch my videos are actually subscribed, and you can always change your mind if you don't like my content. With all that out of the way, let's just jump right into it. So just like any other Pokemon game, you begin with talking to God. Arceus tells us that he wants us to seek out all the Pokemon, which thankfully is my favorite thing to do. After naming ourselves, we wake up on a beach and are greeted by Professor Laventon and the 3 starter Pokemon for this game, who we're instructed to chase after and help capture. On the way there, we receive the Arc Phone, which we're told by God itself is the way to keep in contact with Arceus. After going through the tutorial and catching all 3 of them, we give them back to Laventon and he introduces us to our new life in Jubilife Village. Here we meet the professor's assistant Akari, who is also a member of the Survey Corps for the town, and after sleeping for the night, we're told that a giant electrical storm happened in the area. We meet Captain Silene and are immediately put in initiation to join the Galaxy Expedition team, which begins our first mission of the game. Because we're instructed to catch some Pokemon, Laventon gives us the choice of picking one of the starters that we caught in the beginning of the game to be our new companion. Thankfully, there's no limitation to whoever you choose, so I chose the best and correct choice for the game, Cyndaquil. I will die on this hill. As we're leaving the town, we're greeted by Volo, who is a merchant of the Hisui region. After having a super quick battle, we're ready to start our adventure. Our first stop in this game is going to be the Obsidian Fieldlands. Now, if you haven't played this game yet, the areas in this game are pretty much unlike any other Pokemon game. Because this game is before any sort of major technology, the entire map is just like the wild areas from Sword and Shield. This means that wherever you go, there are Pokemon to be caught. Although this area looks enormous, this is one of the many biomes where you can find Pokemon, but we'll get to that when the time comes. So to complete our initiation, we're instructed with catching the first few Pokemon in the area, which is a great transition to quickly cover the catching mechanics. So just like every other Pokemon game, you can catch them by battling, lowering their HP, and throwing a ball, but you can also catch them just by throwing a ball at them. This obviously makes them harder to catch, but there are situations that make them easier to catch, for example, if a Pokemon isn't looking at you, or even if it's asleep. Every Pokemon in the game has a certain attitude to them, like Bidoof are very friendly and usually run away, whereas Shinx will almost always get mad and want to battle you, which means that you can't catch them out of battle until they calm down, so it's important to implement an element of stealth to avoid that issue. Alright, now that you're all caught up with basically the core parts of the game, let's get to catching these Pokemon. After catching Bidoof, Starly, and Shinx, we can head back to the Jubilife Village and meet Commander Kamado, and we're given a uniform and the Pokedex so we can actually begin our challenge. From here, we're able to head back into the Obsidian Fieldlands, and we're free to explore to our heart's content. As you can imagine, there are a ton of Pokemon that can be obtained here, so I just tried to catch literally anything I set my eyes on. In the area, I caught Wurmple, Buizel, and I managed to find Eevee, which is super cool because I can evolve that into a ridiculous amount of types, so this could potentially be really great to... Oh. Yeah, I forgot to mention Pokemon can run away too. Later on, we receive the crafting kit from Akari, which allows us to build things like healing items and Pokeballs from the materials that we pick up in the overworld. Although you can still buy items like any other Pokemon game, if you're low on money, this is a really great alternative because you can farm resources pretty quickly later on in the game. Once we head back, we're given our first star rank, which is essentially the level cap for the Pokemon we use in battles. This is entirely based on how much of the Pokedex you complete, and it also unlocks stronger items and Pokeballs, so realistically, it will get easier to catch Pokemon as we progress through the ranks. On the next day, we have a battle against Akari in the village, and we are instructed to cross the bridge in Aspiration Hill to meet Mai, who is a warden of the Diamond Clan. After fighting her, she says that we're strong enough to take on the alpha Pokemon in Deershark Heights, which is causing trouble in the area. On our way there, I managed to catch Kricketot, Geodude, and Stantler, but it's important to note another new mechanic. Because this is the olden days, Pokemon don't evolve like we've always known them to. Because they don't evolve when they level up, we have to do it the old-fashioned way. peer pressure. So although Pokemon still evolve at a certain level, you have to evolve them manually, which may sound annoying, but it's actually a way better mechanic because if you just don't want your Pokemon to evolve, you don't have to spam the B button after every single level. In addition, you're not forced to learn new moves, and instead you can just teach them whenever you want from the menu, which makes the entire team building process so much easier in my opinion. With the levels for Wurmple, I was able to evolve it all the way into Beautifly. At Deershark Heights, we find Alpha Kricketune, which is yet another new mechanic. These Pokemon are notoriously stronger than any other Pokemon in the area, and it's important to take them down for good XP, but also for good items and unlocks. Now, because I assumed these were boss battles, I didn't catch any of these for like the entire game, which I will admit is a little embarrassing, but to be fair, they don't tell you that you can, so it's not exactly my fault for not knowing that. Thankfully, all these Pokemon can still be obtained outside of these events, so it really doesn't affect the outcome of this challenge at all. After taking it down, we're greeted by a wild Weirdeer, who thanks us for making the area safe, and we build a new campsite which can now be fast traveled to, so we don't have to walk this entire distance again. On the next day, we meet Adamant and Irida, who were the leaders of the rivaling Diamond and Pearl clans, and learned the electrical storm affected Pearl clan's Cleaver, who is a noble Pokemon for the group. We're instructed to check the area where Cleaver is by ourselves, which means that we get some new areas to catch some Pokemon. Because this area is on the complete opposite side of the map, I was able to catch Burmy, Abra, Zubat, Drifloon, Pikachu, Pichu, Paris, Kricketune, Bibarel, Baniri, Psyduck, and Scyther. On top of that, I was able to evolve Starly to Staravia, Shinx to Luxio, and Cyndaquil to Quilava. This brings the total to 26 Pokemon. At the Grand Tree Arena, we meet Warden Leon and Irida, and are told that we need to come up with a way to calm down the Cleaver. After talking to Laventon, he suggests that we should throw bombs with the Pokemon's favorite food inside of them. On the way back to the tree, the Diamond Clan gives us the Celestica Flute, and we're able to gain Weirdeer's trust to be able to ride on it. This is essentially the replacement for the HMs and big key items in the game, and being able to zoom on this deer plus fast travel will make exploring certain areas of the game a lot more bearable. After speaking to Irida and proving our strength to take on Cleaver, we're able to enter the area and take on our first boss in the game. So out of all the parts in the game that are new, this is easily the most drastic change out of the entire series. For noble Pokemon fights, you have to throw bombs at them to reduce their health, and whenever the meter is empty, you finish the mission. The interesting part is that the Pokemon will use moves on you, and if you get hit too many times, you lose and have to start over. Fortunately, if you use the right tactics, you can tire out the Pokemon and use your own Pokemon to try and take it down. If you're successful in doing that, you can throw a ton of bombs at it to really take down its HP. After dodging quite a few attacks, I was able to pretty easily throw the last bomb and heal the first noble Pokemon. After heading back to the village, we meet Volo again, and he's impressed that we got an insect plate from the Cleaver and says that he'll help try and track down the rest of the other plates and learn about the world's past. At the end of the day, we're stopped by Vesa, who tells us that we need to find a bunch of ghostly wisps that are scattered around the Hisui region, and I'm sure you can tell where this is going, but we'll take care of this much later when we have more access to the map. On the next day, we're instructed by Silene to go to the next location, which is going to be the Crimson Mirelands to help out the next noble Pokemon. We're tasked with meeting somebody in the Silesian ruins, but I think it's time to grab a few more Pokemon. On the way there, I managed to catch Badoo, Parasect, Carnivine, Lickitung, and Ghastly, which ended up unlocking the 3rd rank, which allows you to use and craft Great Balls. In the Silesian ruins, we meet Warden Caliba, and she refuses our help to tame the noble Pokemon. We find out from Volo that a group called the Misfortunes stole part of the engravings in the ruins, and we're tasked with tracking them down to get that back. After defeating all of them, we're given the wall fragment and can restore the ruins to its original state. Caliba takes us up on our offer to calm Ursuluna and tells us to meet her at the Sludge Mound when we're ready. On the way there, I managed to catch Tangela, Krogunk, Yanma, and Hippopotas, but it's once again time for a brand new mechanic. As you traverse through the region, occasionally you'll get a notification that a space-time distortion is forming near you. If you head into the Rift, you can fight some special Pokemon that don't normally appear in each area, or even the region. For each location in the map, there's at least one exclusive Pokemon that can be found, so it's important to go into them as they're only around for a little bit of time. With this, I was able to catch an Eevee. At the Sludge Mountain, we can calm Ursuluna, but we then find out that it's not the noble Pokemon that was troubled. After playing the Celestica Flute, we can add Ursuluna to our utility Pokemon. If we ride on him, we can dig for special items, which will definitely help later on. After reporting back to Laventon, we encounter an Unknown, which activates another side quest in the game. All of the letters of Unknown are scattered across the region, and if we check our Pokedex, it'll give us clues as to where they're located. Thankfully, we only need to get one, so we'll come back to that later. Moving forward a bit, we're tasked by Kamado with taking down the actual noble Pokemon, Lilligant. After finding her in the Crimson Mirelands, we can face off in another battle. Out of all the noble battles, this is by far the easiest one because it only took like 3 minutes to heal it, but with that done, we're once again finished with another area. Upon heading back to Jubilife, Kamado once again gives us another mission of exploring the next location, which is going to be the Cobalt Coastlands. We're told that we have to find Warden Iskin to learn more about the next noble Pokemon, but obviously along the way we'll have a ton of new Pokemon that we can grab. In the area, I was able to catch Glameow, Mothim, Scorpy, Spheal, Vulpix, Dustox, Murkrow, Combee, and Aipom. Throughout all this catching, I was able to evolve Weasel to Floatzel, Luxio with a Luxray, and Drifloon into Drifblim. At Aipom Hill, we meet Iskin, and he accepts our help to tame the noble Pokemon, but needs us to complete a small task. Because the noble is located on Fire Pit Island and we have to cross a big body of water, he asked us to catch a Dusclops at Deadwood Haunt in the southern part of the map so we could potentially craft food to summon Basculegion to help. After catching Duskull and Dusclops, we're able to create a meal and head to the beach to summon it. Once it appears, we can use the Celestical Flute, and we're now able to swim in waters across the region. After unlocking it, the Misfortunes steal one of Iskin's Growlithe, and we're tasked with heading to Fire Pit Island to try and rescue it. Although the water does unlock a lot of new areas for Pokemon, for the time being we're going to take care of only a few encounters along the way. With this, we can catch Mantine, Mantike, Shellos, Remoraid, Magmar, and Graveler, but I was also able to evolve Staravia to Staraptor and Quilava into Typhlosion. This brings a total of 58 Pokemon. After stopping the Misfortunes on the island and getting Growlithe back, it immediately evolves into Arcanine, and Electrical Storm transforms it into its rampant state. Because Iskin had already prepared bombs for it, we're free to take on the third noble. This specific battle was much harder than the others for the sole reason that you don't really have a lot of places to move, and Arcanine's attacks take full advantage of that. Thankfully though, this only took a little bit more than Lilligant, so with that done, we can easily take on the rest of the game. With all that taken care of, we're once again instructed with heading to the next location, which is going to be the Coronet Highlands. After reaching rank 4, we're able to meet with Adaman as well as Melly and have a quick battle before being assigned to the location. In the practice area, Irida introduces us to Warden Ingo, who also fell from the rift in the sky just like we did. He offers to let us borrow Sneasler to help scale the mountain, so we make our way to the next area to get that started. As we make our way up the mountain, there are a ton of new encounters that are available that we can add to our total. I was able to catch Golbat, Bronzong, Bronzor, Ursaring, Teddiursa, Gligar, Gibble, Sudowoodo, Nosepass, and Voltorb before reaching our next location. During all of this, we're given access to Sneasler through the Celestica Flute, which allows us to scale basically any wall in the game, which doesn't necessarily allow us to access any new areas, but it does let us traverse the region a lot faster. At the Sacred Plaza, we prove our strength to Melly before heading into the Moonview Arena to take on the next noble, Electrode. So out of all the nobles in this game, this one is arguably the most difficult as its moves are really hard to avoid, and admittedly, I actually lost the first time I fought this because of how much was going on in the battle. Thankfully, it only took me 2 attempts, but those electric attacks made it super difficult to take it down. With this area quickly taken care of, we're free to head back to Jubilife Village. After meeting again with Kamado, he informs us that we only have one more noble that has to be cleansed, that being Avalugg in Alabaster Icelands. However, in order to get to that area, we have to reach rank 5 in our Pokedex, and because I've been zipping through the main story, I haven't been able to complete that, so let's take some time to get a whole bunch of Pokemon. Now, because I knew I was missing a lot from basically every location we've been to so far, I decided to hop around the areas without really any rhyme or reason, but I did want to explore new parts of the map that were just out of the way beforehand, which definitely helped locate some of the more hard to find Pokemon. After looking back at this, it's really hard to explain how long it takes to find some of these encounters. I know it may seem like I'm ripping through the game, but a lot of these encounters are like 5 minutes apart from each other because you just have to get a lot more stealthy as you get further into the game. I know it may seem like I'm rushing, but so many moments of this game we're just waiting around for the perfect moment to catch a Pokemon. After running around for a while, I was able to catch Rhydon, Machop, Yanmega, Quillfish, Chansey, Togepi, Ponyta, Mime Jr., Gastrodon, Kadabra, Gyarados, Magikarp, Pachirisu, Roselia, Barboach, Toxicroak, Goomy, Petalil, Turtwig, Haunter, and Rhydon. This gives us a new total of 89 Pokemon. After receiving the 5th ranking, we can enter the Alabaster Icelands, where we meet up with Adaman and Irida, and we're told to go to Avalugg's Legacy to learn more about, well, Avalugg. Now, out of every location in the game, I'd like to think that the Icelands are by far the largest, or at least they do a great job of making it feel that way. Either way, there's a lot of ground to cover, which means that there's also a lot of Pokemon to catch. I was able to catch Snorunt, Electabuzz, Machoke, Elekid, and Bergmite before meeting up with everybody in the area. From here, we meet up with Warden Garrick, who we have to once again prove our strength to save the final noble. We find out that Avalugg needs the eternal ice at the top of this glacier to form its soothing bombs, and we're instructed to talk to Sabi to learn how to do that. For some reason, she was already listening to this entire conversation, and we're challenged with chasing her around the entire area while she flies on her Braviary. After meeting her on the peak of the mountain, she tells us that we need to meet her at Snowpoint Temple, which is conveniently on the other side of the map. Man, if only somebody had a flying Pokemon that I could ride on to get there super fast. Man, that would be pretty neat if that happened to me. I guess I'll just have to walk there all by myself. Wait, are you actually leaving me stranded on this mountain? Well, on the upside, there are at least a few more new Pokemon to grab, so on the way up, I was able to catch Hisui and Sneasel, Chingling, Rufflet, Basculin, and Chimecho. At the entrance to the temple, Sabi challenges us to solve the puzzle to reach the top of the building, so once again we have to chase her to prove our worth. Aside from the big Reggie puzzle, there are a ton of really scary and insanely strong Pokemon to be found here, so it's important you bring out the right Pokemon and... I don't know how to fix this. Although I didn't want to mess with a level 65 Gallade, I did end up getting Ralts before getting to the highest floor. After defeating Braviary, Sabi gives us the ability to ride it, which is easily the best ability in the game, even though you can't constantly fly around the map. Upon reaching the top of the glacier, our Arc Phone helps us retrieve the Eternal Ice, and we're ready to take on Avalugg. Now, just like the Electrode fight, Avalugg is also kind of annoying to defeat, but just like the Noble Arcanine fight, we also have very limited movement, and there are a lot of attacks that you need to dodge all at once, but overall this didn't take too much time to take down. With all the Nobles cleansed, the main story should be over, right? Well, not exactly. On the next day, we wake up to find the rift at the top of Mount Coronet has expanded and covered the entire region. At this point, Kamado doesn't trust us and assumes that we have something to do with it, and only freed the nobles to give the town a false sense of security, so we're banished from the village until things are sorted out. After trying to talk to the Diamond and Pearl clans, they tell us that they're both unable to help due to being worried of going to war again over accepting a threat to the region. After getting turned down by Mai, Volo catches up with us and suggests that he has a friend who could possibly help out with their situation. At the Hideaway Retreat, we meet Kogita, who explains that it's her long-awaited duty to help us during our time of danger, and she takes us into her home to reveal our big plan. She tells us that we need to visit the 3 lake spirits and retrieve their gifts and take them to the Shrouded Ruins to craft the Red Chain. After leaving the house, Adam and Irida appear to offer their assistance, but to avoid this news getting anyone's attention, we have to decide who we want to help us save the region. Because I chose Pearl when I 100%ed BDSP, I decided to go with Diamond Clan to switch it up. First stop is Lake Verity. Inside each cave, you have to take down an alpha Pokemon, and it was at this point that I realized that I could actually catch these Pokemon, which was once again super embarrassing, but thankfully I ended up catching Overquill because I had no idea where to get that. So with that in mind, we'll have to catch Gudra and Zoroark later in the game. After defeating each of them, the Lake Spirit appears and challenges you to a test of skill, which to no surprise, I couldn't do successfully. When it came to Uxie, you had to count up the total of the eyes that each of these Pokemon had, and I swear it took me like 10 minutes to realize that Zubat didn't have any eyes. Like, how do I not know what the most common Pokemon in the history of the franchise looks like? After receiving Mesprit's Plume, Uxie's Claw, and Azelf's Fang, we can head to the Shrouded Ruins. Once we meet with Kogita and Volo, the Lake Spirits appear once again and craft the Red Chain with the items to stop the legendary Pokemon. Upon heading to Jubilife Village to prove that we're not evil, we find out that Kamado made the decision to scale Mount Coronet himself to take on the Rift. Per Siling's instructions, we're told to chase after him. On the way up the mountain, we're stopped by Benny, who I haven't given any context to in this entire video because he's only been in the story to give us good food at the end of the day, and he decides that he wants to be the hero to stop me. I really have no idea why they decided he, of all people, was going to be the big plot twist of, hey, I'm actually a good guy, but I'm also a bad guy when I need to be, but to be fair, I was surprised. After crushing him, we meet Kamado at the temple, and we try to prove to him that we can save the world if he just lets us. Because he's fearful that he'll be wrong about us and doesn't want to fail the village, he challenges us to a battle to decide who will take on the Rift. After defeating him, he lets us pass to take on the challenge. At the plateau, Adamant starts hearing voices from a Pokemon in his head, who challenges us to take them on with the Red Chain. Suddenly, the rift opens and Dialga emerges. Thankfully, we have the Red Chain and we've played Diamond and Pearl, so we all know that there's nothing it can do to stop us. Well, I'm out of ideas. With this, we're immediately forced into battle against it. As you'd expect, this is just like any other legendary battle, so it's not exactly very hard to catch this, but I'm also a firm believer that the catch rate is heavily boosted in this game for every Pokemon, so this only took a few balls before we could add it to the total. With Dialga captured, Adamant is contacted again, and another portal opens to reveal that Palkia would also like to fight. Because we don't have another Red Chain to stop this one, we do the only thing a rational person would do. Leave. Back at the Sacred Plaza, the gang tries to figure out the best course of action to take down Palkia. Laventon suggests that we need to find something that has the same properties as the plates that we've been collecting this whole journey. Irida brings Leon, who is apparently knowledgeable in the stones, and suggests that we find Origin Ore, as it could be potentially linked to the plates. After locating in a cave, we're stopped by the Misfortunes and have to take them down once again. Although it's very obvious that no one except for us during this time period actually knows how to battle, the fact that they only have at most 2 Pokemon during this entire story makes me feel that they should have, like, another game plan. Like, if they pull the flintlock out on us, I'd be shocked if the credits didn't just immediately start rolling. After taking it to Laventon, he's able to craft it into the Origin Ball. After heading back to the temple, we can challenge Palkia once again, except this time when I use Dialga to counter it, Palkia blows up the entire temple and then turns into a horse? I guess? This then turns into another noble fight, and in my opinion, this battle is better than all the previous ones we've done, and I really think that this one in particular was the perfect level of difficulty. By this point, you should have a pretty solid grasp on the movement of the game, so this didn't take very long to complete. With the Origin Ball in hand, we're able to catch Palkia and restore the Hisui region to its former state. And with that, we've successfully completed the main story of the game. But as you can tell, we're definitely not done with the challenge. Now, although we have caught more Pokemon than I probably ever have in the main story of a Catch 'em All, there are so many Pokemon that I skipped encountering on the way through the story, so let's take a little bit of time to address that. Upon starting up the game again, we meet with everyone at Jubilife headquarters, and we're instructed with completing the same task. Valo offers to give us some more insight into the legends of the region, so we meet with him at Heights Camp to learn more. We find out with some hieroglyphics that aside from Dialga and Palkia, there are many more legendaries to be discovered, most notably Arceus. After doing a little investigating, we end up fighting an Alpha Vespaquen, and we find that it was holding a stone plate. Kinda random considering that it's not even its typing. Maybe I should hold it instead. Get it? Because it's the stone plate. My channel name is John. After talking to Kogita about wanting to learn more about the plates, she reveals that the Pokemon in those engravings have a high chance of holding the last plates that we need, so we now have a whole bunch of side quests that we can go on to investigate all of that. Before we do any of the legendary lore, I want to get some catching done. I decided to go through the entire dex and catch literally any Pokemon I didn't have registered, as well as fly to all the unvisited areas to see if there's potentially anything hidden there that I might have missed. I once again kind of flew around randomly to different locations, so I won't be explaining where exactly I got them, but it should be pretty obvious which of the 5 locations I caught them in. After making my way around the region, I was able to catch Snorlax, Wormadam, Heracross, Alakazam, Casgoon, Swinub, Piloswine, Ambipom, Riolu, Abomasnow, Happiny, Oshawott, Glalie, Licky Licky, Avalugg, Snover, some more Eevee for evolutions, Tangrowth, Rapidash, Onix, Chimchar, Golduck, Steelix, Hippowdon, Skuntank, Clefairy, Celio, Octillery, Tentacruel, Tentacool, Finneon, Luminion, Kirlia, Stunky, Togetic, Wishcash, Vespaquen, Honchkrow, Roserade, Crobat, Rotom, Golem, Goodra, Electivire, Gabite, Misdreavus, Mismagius, Clefable, Shieldon, Jolteon, Cranidos, Zoroark, Zorua, Growlithe, Drapion, Piplup, Chatot, Cleffa, Cherubi, Magby, Bonsly, Munchlax, Lucario, and Blissey. This gives us a new total of 166 Pokemon. Much better. I also had to note that during this, I found an unknown stuck in the big tree where Cleaver was, as well as received the other 2 starters from Laventon, so with Rowlet, we're actually at 168 Pokemon. Now let's do some grinding. Thankfully, during this catching spree, I was alerted about a swarm of Chansey and Blissey spawning. In total, these give like 6 to 10,000 experience per battle, so grinding in this game is also not an issue whatsoever. Considering that a lot of Pokemon I caught were also ready to evolve the moment I got them, this part of the challenge is probably the easiest it's ever been. It's also important to note that a lot of evolution methods have slightly changed due to the fact that there's only one version of this game. Because of all the trade evolutions, you can actually just evolve them with the items that you buy from the Merit Shop after picking up a bunch of lost items in the overworld. Thankfully, if you don't have enough money, you can get a lot of these items in the space-time dimensions, but overall it's pretty easy to farm to get the stuff that you need. With this, we can get Braviary, Dartrix, Decidueye, Duat, Samurott, Monferno, Infernape, Mr. Mime, Lilligant, Gardevoir, Sliggoo, Rhyperior, Togekiss, Grotle, Torterra, Walrein, Gengar, Machamp, Magmortar, Garchomp, Probopass, Rampardos, Bastiodon, Perugly, Mamoswine, Cherim, Prinplup, and Empoleon. Well, that was fast. Okay, now let's take care of the really weird new evolutions. The first and arguably the most annoying is Ursuluna. In order to evolve Ursaring, we're going to need to coincidentally hop on our actual Ursuluna and start searching for treasure. If you're lucky enough, you'll find the Peat Block, which is apparently a rare drop. If you use it on Ursaring, it will evolve, but there is one more condition. Ursaring will only evolve in the Crimson Mirelands during a full moon, so you basically just have to rest until nighttime over and over until it finally happens, which honestly took longer than it did to find the actual item. I'm not sure if I was just unlucky, but this wasn't supposed to be the hard part. Once you do find that moon, you're free to evolve into Ursuluna. Next evolving is Stantler. This one is significantly easier to do, but it's still pretty tedious because you have to use Psy Shield Bash 20 times as an agile attack. Because this uses 2 power points, it can take a pretty long time to do that because you have to keep healing, but if you just attack a bunch of low-level Pokemon, you'll have it in no time. After taking care of that, Stantler evolved into Weirdeer. Finally, we have Basculin. In order to evolve in the big ol' Basculegion, our Pokemon has to take over 300 HP of recoil damage, or at least that's what people said is the method. When I tell you I took like 2,000 HP of damage before it actually evolved, I'm not sure if I had to survive every hit in the battle or not, but it's definitely related to recoil damage. This one took quite a while, but eventually it did evolve into Basculegion. With that enormous chunk of the dex done, let's take on the side task I've been dreading the most, the Wisps. Now, if you haven't caught on by now, the Wisps that we have to collect are tied to Spiritomb, and unfortunately this is not as easy as it used to be. Just like a lot of open world RPGs, there are a bunch of collectibles that you have to get, and the Wisps are the collectibles of this game. In total, there are 108 Wisps that need to be obtained, and they're located all over every single location in the region. Now, normally in these challenges, these aren't too difficult because I'll have a list of where they all are, but this is my first playthrough. Basically, no one knows where all of them are, so naturally, I found them by myself. Because it would be silly to gatekeep these locations, I've included a spreadsheet in the description that contains all of the locations, and all I ask in return is that you, 1, subscribe, and 2, completely ignore the final time in this game because this is literally the only reason I didn't complete this in 24 hours. One big tip that I'll give is that even though you can use my map photos, only search for them during the night. Not only are some exclusive to nighttime, but they are significantly easier to see from a distance at night, especially in the Alabaster Icelands. Despite this taking up an enormous amount of time, it wasn't a complete waste as I was able to catch a lot of really rare Pokemon because I had to search every single little area of the map. With this, I was able to get Lopunny, Raichu, Dusknoir, Gliscor, Frostlass, Gallade, oh yeah, and this. So fun fact, when a shiny appears in the map in this game, it lets out a little jingle, which is easily the best post-game quality of life thing they could have added to this game. With this, we've got a new total of 205 Pokemon, but we still have a few more to go. With all the Wisps collected, we can meet Vesa back in Jubilife Village, and she instructs us with meeting her at the Shrouded Ruins. Once we go there, we find out that she's the final Wisp, and with all of them collected, we can summon Spiritomb. Now let's take on some of the legendaries. So like I mentioned earlier, Kogita gave us the instructions to encounter basically every legendary in the game, so realistically we can approach these in whatever order we choose. Because I've wanted to catch these since I saw them, let's get the Lake Spirits. So without boring you to death, these specific battles are literally the exact same ones from the original games. You just fight them and catch them. Like I mentioned earlier, the catch rate for everything in this game is definitely boosted as I caught all of these Pokemon in a single Ultra Ball, and I might be an outlier on this, but I'm totally fine with the legendaries being easy to catch. They still deal a ton of damage and you have to bring its health down, so it's still definitely a challenge, but it surely beats throwing 40 Dust Balls and then eventually having to reset. With Mesprit, Azelf, and Uxie collected, let's check out the other members of the Legend team. If we head back to Fire Pit Island, we can meet up with Iskin and Irida outside the volcano. If we go inside, we can find Heatran and then take it on. Now, for some reason, this battle requires you to throw mud balls at it to douse the flames, and it takes all of like 3 seconds to do so I'm not exactly sure why they added that in. I just feel like if they wanted to make it challenging, they could have gone a little bit further. After another ball, we can add it to the team. Another big spoiler alert, I caught everything else in one Pokeball too. In the Alabaster Icelands, if we go to the Snowpoint Temple, we can meet up with Adamant and Sabi at the basement. If we go interact with the door with the original 3 Regiplate typings, the door will open and allow us to take on Regigigas. With another ball, we're done with this quest as well. The final legendary for this quest resides at the Coronet Highlands. If we head to the Moonview Arena, we can talk to Melly and Caliba, and we're told that Cresselia is causing trouble inside. Out of all the battles, this one is the most difficult because you have to throw your Pokemon at Cresselia while all of your controls are inverted, which is a super unique little way to make the battle more interesting. With another ball, we're able to capture it as well as get another plate. With all these done, we're told by Commander Kamido to meet him at Prelude Beach, where our challenge began. Upon meeting him there, we're challenged to another battle, and once we defeat him, we're given the Fist Plate, which leaves only 1 plate left. After talking to Kogita and giving her 3 pieces of wood, she gives us with the final Pixie Plate, which means that we now have everything that we need. Val then tells us to meet him at the temple at the top of Mount Coronet to see if we can get to the end of this mystery. At the top, he reveals that he only helped us throughout our entire journey because he knew that we were the chosen one once we got our first plate from Cleaver. Rather than have him do any of the work, he watched as we collected every plate, only to find out that he has the final one and we have to beat him for it. After defeating his replica, but not actually replica Cynthia team because he's older than her, he refuses to admit defeat. Conveniently, with all the plates in the same area, Giratina appears to the Distortion World. Let's have a quick chat about this entire sequence. So when you defeat Volo and Giratina is summoned, you aren't healed. No big deal, right? We can work around that. Unfortunately, Giratina gets to immediately attack, and since the Volo battle was already really difficult, my only Dialga got knocked out. Now, what do you think happens next? A, we battle Giratina again, B, we can get it at a later point, or C, we had to fight Volo all over again. So although this is easily the coolest battle in the game, it is legitimately the hardest Pokemon battle I have ever had to do. If you played this game, you know that literally every Pokemon hits hard, so your opportunities to heal your team mid-battle are extremely low, especially when you're taking on Cynthia's team. Now, I'm sure this battle is a lot more bearable when you have level 80s or 90s, but I'm trying to do this as fast as possible, so it's not exactly something that will take 10 minutes to do. With that being said, this did only take a few attempts, but thankfully I was able to take down Giratina, and hopefully we can just... Okay, that's kind of messed up. Not only is Origin Form Giratina much stronger, it also starts out the battle with a free turn, which it will 100% use to wipe out whatever is on the field. I mean this in the nicest way possible, but I hope you, the viewer, will also have an absurdly difficult time beating this. Not because I want to see you upset, I just want you to understand my pain. After finally taking it down, Volo admits defeat and gives us the final plate. Upon receiving it, our Celestica Flute transforms into the Azure Flute, which is obviously used to summon Arceus. However, as God once again reminds us, we still have much more work to do. If we had a spring path, we can enter the cavern to capture Giratina. Thankfully, this took no time at all because I'm done looking at this Pokemon for the rest of the playthrough. With the post-game complete, we can talk to Kogita, who will offer us one more quest that we can go on: catching the Weather Trio. To break it down very easily, these Pokemon are technically the roamers for the game, however, they're not the same as they used to be. Each of these Pokemon are located in their own specific areas, but it's your job to avoid their attacks and chase them down in order to get into a battle. Overall, these really aren't that bad to complete. It's more so trying to find the right opportunity to attack it without your character fainting from a ridiculous onslaught of attacks. In total, this took me about 20 minutes to complete, mostly because I had to find their locations, but with this I was able to get Landorus, Thundurus, and Tornadus on the team. After collecting data on them and showing it to Kogita, she informs us there is one more member, Enamorus. Apparently this is supposed to be the most difficult of them all, but this one took a whopping 3 minutes for me to encounter, so I'm guessing I just got lucky. With this on the team, we've officially caught every legendary in the game. So what's left? So if we look at the decks, I've caught basically everything you can catch in the overworld, but there is something that I mentioned earlier that still has to be addressed: the space-time dimensions. So like I've talked about, these just randomly appear on the map, and they contain exclusive Pokemon for every single area. If you've been paying attention, I've caught a few of them already, but throughout my entire time playing, I didn't see one in 3 of the areas. Unfortunately, there is no way to spawn them because they're completely random events, so the only option is that we just have to wait. I know I mentioned before that the Spiritomb quest is the only reason I didn't complete this in 24 hours, but this is also a very big part of it. I just had to stand there like a dummy because I had completed the entire game, and the only thing I could realistically do is evolve my horde of Eevee that I caught, but you can also catch those in the space-time dimensions, so it seems silly to do that when I know I'm going to find at least a couple through the last 3. I did end up wasting a little bit of time knocking out Graveler until it dropped a Black Auguryte for a specific evolution, but aside from that, I just had to stand still and wait for the notification. After what seemed like an eternity, I was able to catch Magnemite, Magneton, Vaporeon, Jolteon, Porygon, Jotonian Sneasel, and Ninetales because I completely forgot to catch that. Alright, let's evolve the remaining Pokemon. After a little bit of friendship evolutions and item grinding, I was able to evolve the catches to get Porygon 2, Porygon Z, Cleaver, Scizor, Arcanine, Electrode, Sneasler, Magnezone, Espeon, Umbreon, Sylveon, Weavile, Leafeon, and Glaceon. On top of all this, I actually managed to find another shiny when I was going to evolve Glaceon, so we can add Shiny Haunter to the collection as well. I was watching YouTube videos while I was playing, so I'm shocked I was even able to hear the audio cue for it. And with that, we've caught every Pokemon in the game, so you know what we need to do. Upon heading back to the Spear Pillar and playing the Azure Flute, a glowing stairway will appear in front of us. At the top of what I assume is Pokemon Heaven, we finally meet Arceus. Without any words, we have to challenge it to the final battle. Now, as you'd expect, this battle is very tough, but are you really surprised? This battle is like 15 years in the making. They're not gonna make it a cakewalk. So just like the other noble battles, you have to dodge all of its attacks and fight it in battle, but the catch is that during those battles, Arceus can change its typing to whatever it wants, which is easily the most unfair and also insanely cool thing Game Freak has ever done. Like, I was happy it was destroying my Pokemon. Although it did take a bit to learn how to dodge all the moves, it's easily the best boss fight in the history of the Pokemon franchise. It actually feels like you're fighting the god of Pokemon. After taking its health down, Arceus admits defeat and gifts us with a copy of itself, as well as the Legend Plate, which allows Arceus to be every single type at once, which is probably the most insane thing they could have possibly thought of. Now at this point, I didn't really understand that we were also given an actual Arceus that got sent to our pasture, and I assumed that the legend plate was the piece of Arceus that we were getting, so I rematched it again, which by the way is significantly more difficult because the second fight it's at level 100 instead of level 75. I was able to beat Arceus again in 3 minutes and 47 seconds, so if you end up getting a faster time than that, let me know in the comments below. After finding in my PC boxes, we've successfully caught everything in the decks. Well, there is one more thing we can do. So after you get Arceus, if you go to Professor Laventon's board, you should see new tasks to catch the last 4 Sinnoh mythicals. Let's start with the hardest one. If we head back to the Cobalt Coastlands and go through the pincer-looking gateway, we'll hear a cry in the distance. If we head into this little cave, we can find 3 Fione and Manaphy. I will note the requirements to unlock this are super weird because you need a Buizel, Mantike, and Overquill in your party at dusk time for this to activate, and to this day I still have no idea the significance of these 3 Pokemon to influence this event. Next up, if we head back to the Coronet Highlands and head into this rock at nighttime, Darkrai will appear. I really wish there was more context to these, but that's literally it. This one was a little confusing, but to start the battle you just need to hit it with a Pokeball from behind. Finally, the last Pokemon in the entire game actually has some lore to it. If you go to the Obsidian Fieldlands, we can meet a member of the Diamond Clan named Medi. She tells us the story of a mysterious Pokemon that saved her when she was a child. The only thing that she had as a clue was a Cresselia flower. If we head to this dead patch of flowers, the Cresselia will activate and the garden will be restored. Right in the middle of this is the last Pokemon, Shaman. After a single ball, we can add to the total, and with that, we've successfully... oh no. Hold on. As I was saying, and with that, we've successfully caught every Pokemon in Pokemon Legends Arceus. But how did I do? So let's review. So, like I mentioned earlier, finding the Wisps and collecting all the Space-Time Dimensions Pokemon ruined my chances of coming even close to beating this in under 24 hours. I finished with a time of 35 hours and 26 minutes, and honestly, for an almost entirely blind first playthrough, I think this is still a pretty insane time. If I'm being honest, I still think it would have taken over the 24-hour mark without them, but I know it would have been at most 25, 26 hours if I had the knowledge in advance. Either way, this is a very hard game to complete, but it's easily the most fun I've ever had with a catch-em-all video, so much so that I'm doing it again on Twitch, and odds are I'm live right now doing it, so if you've made it this far in the video, please consider checking that out. I don't think I've ever said this in a video before, but if this video doesn't motivate you to buy this game if you haven't already, I don't know what will. This has been the most fun I've had with the Pokemon series in nearly a decade, and that's coming from a person who has made Pokemon their entire life. I know people think that I get paid to say stuff like that, but genuinely, if you're looking for a fresh Pokemon experience, this is 100% the game for you. Aside from that, that's gonna do it for today's video. As always, if you liked the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. I'm gonna be going all out with this game, so you really don't want to miss out on all the videos that I have lined up, because I'm really proud of what I'm going to be putting out. If you're interested in keeping up with me on other platforms, feel free to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, as I'll be posting a lot of updates for streams and future videos like this. Other than that, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.